Thank you for having me. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about kind of what I do, and we're going to talk a little bit about sort of why Intel has a futurist, and then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about sort of work that I've been doing recently, and I think how it might affect you. But I want to start off by saying, we're going to have the presentation up there, and the guys on the camera are going to be really happy because I'm a pacer. So like, the poor guys would be like this. It is an honor for me to be here and talk to you this morning. When I was getting ready for this talk, I started thinking, it turns out I have actually come to a lot of your museums and planetariums and science centers actually over the years and actually given talks. And I usually say I'm a big fan of science centers. They actually mean a lot to me, and I think they're very important in the development of the future. Hopefully, I think some of you were actually in the audience that have actually been to your place. There we go. Hey! Now, these people will tell you, because I normally follow this up, because again, I like to sort of prove what I talk about. But I actually brought a picture here to show you how much I love science museums and science centers. And Adam in the back told me, we hope this clicker works because, as he said, it's a long way from the stage. Let's see if it works. So here's the evidence that I love science centers. I was married in a planetarium. Thank you. Yeah, I was married at ASTC in Oregon. ASTC? Hometown. I'm from Portland, Oregon. So yeah, that's me. I got married in a science center. That's how nerdy I am. I actually got married in a science center. Okay. Oh, and Adam, this works great, so we are good. So again, I'm Brian David Johnson. I'm at Intel Futurist for those who are on sort of social networks. As you can tell by my first slide here, I'm going to have a very serious discussion with you this morning. I love being Intel's futurist because I'm probably the only guy at Intel who actually gets to put space stations and rocket ships in my presentations, and nobody can say anything about it. And I'm like, what? I'm the futurist, what are you going to say? So, but I want to walk you through some of this work that I've done called Waking the Algorithm. So again, I was born, when I look at this, I was like, because my wife, she's the one down there in white, and I'm the guy down there. When I look at that, I kind of go, wow, I actually at one point in my life had hair. It was a long time ago. Okay, so let's get started. So my first slide here, if you look really, really closely, says I work for a large company and we have a lot of lawyers. Excellent, moving on. You're all witnesses now that I actually did that. I actually love that you're laughing, because usually when I come to your science centers and your museums and talk, they usually have me in for like the adult night, which usually means there's booze. And usually the jokes go over really well, so it's great. So you're laughing, that's great. I didn't actually try the coffee, I didn't know it was spiked. Okay, so who am I? As I said, I'm Brian David Johnson, I'm Intel's futurist. It's my job to look 10 to 15 years into the future and model how people will act and interact with technology. So, and the reason why I do that is, and it might sound a little bit like science fiction, but it's pretty pragmatic, because at Intel, to design the chips, it takes about 5 to 10 years. So it's of vital business importance today for Intel to know what people want to do 10 years from now. And I'll tell you a little bit about kind of what that means as we go through this morning. I have a dual background. I'm part sort of engineer, part designer. I'm a principal engineer at Intel. I also have a design background. But you can pretty much tell everything you need to know about me by looking at this picture. So, the tall, bald guy on the left, he's me. The little guy, his name is Arthur. He's the good-looking guy. Arthur was the first robot ever created by the University of Essex in their robotics lab. I do a lot of work in robotics, a lot of work in artificial intelligence. So you can pretty much tell everything you need to know about me by looking at this picture, evidenced by the fact that I went all the way to the UK and got my picture taken with a 20-year-old robot. You can rest assured, I'm a geek. I'm a huge geek. I am unabashed. I love everything that's nerd-tastic. I am into it. I love everything science. I love everything science fiction, and I feel very, very fortunate that I get to take these two worlds and sort of bash them together in my job. And a lot of that is what we're going to be talking about today. So, as I was saying, at Intel, what I do is I model what it will feel like to be a human 10 to 15 years from now. Right? So I kind of come up with this vision of what's called an experience-based model. What will it be like? What is that experience of living in the future? And it's based on social science and computer science and some economic and technical data. And I talk to a lot of people. I spend most of my time outside the US sort of talking to people about what they think the future is going to look like. And then I use a little bit of science fiction as well. But it all starts with a vision. Right? It all starts with a vision for what the future could look like. And usually, when we're shown visions of the future, this is what we're shown. Right? We see most of things, something that looks like this in science fiction, we see it in advertising, but this is generally what we get shown, right? It's usually a really good-looking guy or a really good-looking girl, and they're in front of this really cool device, and then this really streamlined world, right? This is the vision that we are normally given for what the future is going to look like. Now, I have to tell you, I hate this picture. Now, I can also hate this picture because this picture comes from Intel, which, as you can imagine, doesn't make me a lot of friends in the marketing department. But the reason why I hate this picture is because when I look at it, I ask myself, where are the baby toys? I ask, where are the pillows? Where are the pictures of the family and friends? Where's the stuff, right? Where's the stuff that makes us comfortable? Where's the stuff that makes us human? I mean, human beings are incredibly complicated. We have various cultures. We all come from different backgrounds. And this is why I love designing, first and foremost, with humans in mind. And when I look at this, this is intellectually dishonest to me. Because if we're going to come up with a realistic vision of the future, if we're going to come up with a realistic vision of the future that we can build, it can't look like this. Now, on my next slide, I have a picture of what the future is actually going to look like. Who'd like to see it? I saw that guy right there raised his hand. You're so very polite. Now I got to tell you, I was in, so I speak at universities all the time. And I was speaking probably to about 600 to 1,000 undergraduate engineering students, right? I'm from Intel, a big engineering company, and I'm talking about this stuff, and I'm there, and I'm a futurist, and I'm like, all right, who wants to see the future? Right? These people are literally going to build our future. I'm like, who wants to see the future? And it's completely silent, except for one dude way in the back who goes, sure. I'm like, seriously? That's what I get? Sure. Okay, get ready. Hold on to something. Here we go. Bam! Right? It's awesome. Now, the reason why I love this picture, now as you can imagine from a technology company and what I do, this woman's world is filled with technology. She has an Ultrabook, she has a smartphone, she has a connected TV, she even has a connected picture frame. So there's a lot of technology in this picture, and this actually comes from some field research that our social scientists did just recently. But the reason why I love this picture is because it's full of stuff, right? She's got all the junk on the top of the dresser, the drawer is open, she's in her bare feet, she's chilling out in bed. This is a comfortable future. This is a future for humans, that actual human beings could live in. And this is the type of thing and the sort of bar that I hold myself to, is that if we're going to design a future, if we're going to envision a future, we need to envision a future that is made for people. We need to envision a future that is someplace that we would want to live in. I want to live in this future. I don't want to live in this future because this future looks like prison. I want to live in this future because this future is comfortable. She literally, you might be able to see it down front. She actually has a pillow that says chill out. So this to me is the bar. So when I have these visions and sort of think of the future and the models that I create, I'm always designing for a future that is filled with people and diverse people with diverse backgrounds. Okay, so how do I do it? how do we sort of come up with this? This is the sort of one sort of boring slide, of I think hopefully the only boring slide. This is what I do called future casting. And future casting is a process. Now, if you remember only one thing from my presentation today, please remember that I do not make predictions. I refuse to make predictions. Invariably, as I walk out the door, somebody's going to ask me what Intel's stock price is going to be. I don't know. If I knew, we'd all be rich. I don't do that. See, for me, predicting the future is also intellectually dishonest because it assumes that the future is fixed, that the future is some fixed point that we're all sort of running to and we're powerless to do anything. And we all, as we all should embrace, the future is always in motion. The future is built every day by the actions of people. So, I do not make predictions. If somebody is usually going to predict something, if somebody is giving you a prediction, they're usually trying to sell you something. So I don't make predictions. What we do in future casting is it's a process. It's a process to develop this actionable vision for the future. And believe me, I work for an engineering company. It's a process. The process is written down, and we do the process, we repeat the process, we validate the process, we make the process better, and then we start all over again, and then we have a process. So believe me, it's a process. But it really is based in humans. So that's why I talk about the social science part of what we do. Actually, the lab that I have in Intel is actually, the woman who runs it is a cultural anthropologist. And she runs the entire lab, which I'm actually going to show you a little bit of her work, and that's kind of what we're going to get into in the latter half of the presentation. But it's a process to be able to envision the future and then to get us there. And I included this quote because I'm a huge fan of Isaac Asimov, not so much because of his science fiction. I am a huge fan of his science fiction, but because of his science fact. He was actually one of the most prolific writers of nonfiction when it came to science. He was known as the great explainer. He could sort of explain anything from physics to biology to even Shakespeare. And I love this quote about predicting the future. He says that predicting the future is a hopeless, thankless task, with ridicule to begin with and all too often scorn to end with. How's that for a job description? So, I do not make predictions. Okay. So I want to give you a little kind of grounding in the kind of the work that we're doing and kind of what we're seeing and where things are coming from a technology standpoint. So as we look out to the year 2020, a lot of the silicon architects that I work with tell me that the size of meaningful computational power as we approach the year 2020 goes to zero. So by 2020, compute moves to zero. Now, by the way, this was a geek test. If you just got goosebumps, you're a geek. If you didn't get goosebumps, that's okay. You're probably going to have a great life. You're going to have an awesome social life. You may even see this thing called the sun. As you can tell, I don't really see the sun very often. But no, to me, I find this incredibly exciting because as compute moves to zero, as we shift from 2010 to 2020, something really, really remarkable happens. For years in technology development, we had to ask ourselves, can we do something? Can we take a desktop and turn it into a laptop? Can we take a laptop and put it into a tablet or a smartphone? Can we do it for years and years and years? But if the size of meaningful computational power approaches zero, the question that we actually ask ourselves completely changes. The question becomes what? What do we want to do with it? Because if the size of meaningful computational power approaches zero, it means we can turn anything into a computer. We could turn this podium into a computer, we could turn my shirt into a computer, we could even turn my body into a computer. So the question isn't, can we do it? But the question becomes, what? What do we want to do? And I have to say, I love this slide. This is a new graphic for me. The guys in the graphics department just sent it to me. Can you guys see like the woman in 1960s? The 1960s, she's got a bouffant hairdo. And if you look at the dude in the 1970s, actually he's got bell bottoms on. Now maybe you might be able to see this down front. Can anybody guess who it is in the year 2010? Somebody said it's Steve Jobs. You can see where he's got the little black turtleneck and the jeans. I didn't figure that out. I actually figured that out on stage in like Toronto. I was like, hey, that's Steve Jobs. And I went back to the designers and they're like, I know, you like showed it for like a month and you never figured it out. So yeah, Steve Jobs, God rest him. But I find it incredibly exciting because that shift from can we do it to what we want, what do we want it to do, is I think incredibly important. And so this then leads us, I think, to a different discussion and a different way of thinking about technology and also the stories that we're telling ourselves about technology. And this is this work that I've been doing called Waking the Algorithm. And let's get it out of the way. So you may hear and sort of, I mean, as we've established early on in the presentation, I'm a geek. An algorithm, it's no big deal, right? An algorithm is simply a progressive series of calculations used to process and analyze large data sets, right? It's a recipe, right? An algorithm, I mean, a recipe for a cake is an algorithm, right? You do this, and you do that, and you do this, and then boom, cake. I mean, that's pretty much all an algorithm is. But this algorithm and the algorithms that we're going to be talking about and the algorithms of my world process data. And this is where things get really interesting. So one of the areas of my research that we're looking at is that when we reach the year 2022, we'll be entering this world of big data. I would think most of you know big data, cloud computing, all that type of stuff. But for me, in the work that I do, how I think about big data, again, it's what it will feel like to be a human in the era of big data, is that data will have a secret life. It'll have a life of its own. I mean, we're all basically fire hydrants of data. We spew data everywhere we go, and that's only going to be bigger, and there's only going to be more of it. There's financial data, and social networking data, and location data, and that all kind of goes up into the cloud. And for most people, it'll feel like this data has a life of its own. You'll have algorithms talking to algorithms, machines talking to machines, and on and on and on. And this is a good thing. We actually want this. It'll make us healthier, it can make us more sustainable, it can make us more productive, we can do a lot with it. But the thing that I think we always have to remember is that data, in and of itself, is meaningless. Data only has meaning when it comes back and touches the lives of people. Human beings make data, and I think all technology, relevant. This is important when we're thinking about the design of technology and the design of the science and technology that goes into this. Because we need to think about, again, the what. What do we want to do? And I would argue, and we'll talk about this a bit more, is that what we want to do is make the lives of people better. This is actually a stated goal that we have at Intel. It's actually in all of our conference rooms. It's to touch the lives of every human being on the planet and make their lives better. And this is not some sort of esoteric thing. We're actually doing this. I'm actually working with a woman. Her name is Rita. Rita and I are kind of working on what does it mean to create algorithms and data that actually is trying to make people's lives better. This is actually, if anybody wants to know a little bit more, I actually did do a screenshot. This is an article that I wrote for Futurist magazine. I actually talk about Rita in it. And I didn't tell Rita until after it was published. I just sort of gave it to her. And then I had this, and Rita, she walks in, puts down the magazine and just goes, and walks out. She's an incredible engineer. She's like, Brian, don't do that again. I'm like, what? It's cool. She didn't want to. So I want to talk to you a little bit about this. So if we're living in this world of big data, and it's the secret life of data, and we're designing these technologies so that they can go off and do things for us and make our lives better, how do we do that? And it's all about the algorithm. So, being a futurist, I often get questions. I'm checking my timer. I want to make sure I keep on time. Being a futurist, I usually get questions from people about how they can prepare for the future. It's so funny that people kind of say, they think about the future as if the future is coming at them, as if it's sort of them against the future, and they need to prepare because the future is going to come at them like a spider monkey, and if you're not ready, the future is going to take you out. It's not like that. It's really not. But usually what I say to people straight away, so their hand goes up and it's like, what can I do to prepare? Or even better, what can my kids do to prepare? And usually before that even comes out of their mouths, what I say is learn to code. Like, that's it? Yeah, learn to code. Just learn to code. And everybody kind of looks at me and they're like, really? And I was like, well, let me tell you why. It's not because I think we're all going to be software engineers, right? I don't think that's it. But code and algorithms are the way that we act and interact with technology. And as the size of meaningful computational power approaches zero, and we're surrounded by computational intelligence, we are only going to be acting and interacting with technology more and more. And it's a language skill. It's sort of understanding what goes into algorithms, I believe, is incredibly important for science, for technology, but actually just to be a human in the future, because we're going to have more of these devices, and actually if we're going to design them to make our lives better, we need to have an understanding of how they work. And so I always tell folks, learn to code and learn about algorithms. Again, I'm a geek, so everybody kind of goes, yeah, okay, whatever, but I'm like, no, you really should. And when you study algorithms and you kind of dig into them, there's a great book actually called The 9 Algorithms That Changed the Future. It's a really, really great book that kind of gets into the kind of history and background of algorithms. Does anybody know, this is like a huge geek point, if anybody actually knows what this is, does anybody know what this algorithm is? It's very early, I know, but you might know. This is PageRank. PageRank is the algorithm that made Google, right? The mighty Google. PageRank is the algorithm that allows you to search massive amounts of information and pull it down in a fraction of a second, right? This is the algorithm, or a part of the algorithm that made Google. And when you learn about algorithms and how they work, you learn two things, two truths. The first truth is that they are beautiful. They are absolutely beautiful. They are incredibly elegant. Again, when you look at something like PageRank, how it can go through and process all of that information in a fraction of a second is incredible. They are a marvel. So, number one, algorithms, amazing. The second truth that you learn is that algorithms are really stupid. I mean, they are really dumb. Technology by itself is really dumb, right? You have to do this, then you have to do this, then you have to do this. If you do it in any other way, it doesn't work. It breaks. Literally, think about, I think we all know this, right? Think about your machine, your smartphone or your tablet. If you don't act or interact exactly the way you're supposed to, it doesn't work. It sort of freaks out and says, I can't do anything for you. Or it crashes, right? It's wild to me that we have to tailor our behavior and our language and how we even input information so that it fits with the machines. This makes no sense to me. Everybody knows the story, right, of the QWERTY keyboard, right? Like somebody back there just got really mad. They're like, yeah, stupid machines, right? The QWERTY keyboard was designed to slow us all down so that the hammers on the typewriter wouldn't get all wound up. And yet we still use it, right? The way that we interact with machines, I believe, is incredibly flawed. And so machines are really, really dumb. When you start thinking of these two truths about them, you begin to understand that algorithms and technology are a product of humans. They're a product, they need us, right? Algorithms need us to tell them what to do so they can go off and do these amazing things. So that an algorithm is actually a work of humanity. It's basically a story. And when I talk with our engineers, one of the things that I tell them is that an algorithm is kind of like a science fiction story. Because what you're doing is it happens narrative, it's linear, and you say do this, do this, do this, do this, and you're imagining an end. Right? And even for Google, with PageRank, they were imagining that they could open up all of the internet to you. It's quite an incredible science fiction story. You just go in and type LOL cats, and then you get a plethora of LOL cats. Right, you do know that, right? They rule the web. Google Google created an artificial intelligence to search the web and learn things on its own, and one of the first things that it learned was what a cat looked like. Now, I have cats, so I agree with it, but I find that amazing. But these algorithms are made by people, and like something that's made by people, we imbue it with our humanity, and we imbue it with our own stories and our own narrative. And this narrative becomes incredibly important for the development of technology and the development of how people think and act and interact with that technology. So I want to walk you through a little bit of research that was done by a colleague of mine, thinking about the story that we're telling ourselves about how we're acting and interacting with technology. And it's thinking about this algorithm as that narrative. How can narrative and storytelling inform what we're building and how we think about technology? Now, some of you may have actually know Dr. Bell. So Dr. Genevieve Bell is a cultural anthropologist and a fellow at Intel, and she and I work quite a lot together about doing this and thinking about these things. I am not an anthropologist, I'm not a social scientist, I'm a futurist. What I actually say is I'm not a social scientist, but I sit very close to her. So if anybody is on social media, and as I go through this, if you think this is a good story and you think this is awesome research, please, her Twitter handle is @FeralData. Just say, @FeralData, @IntelFuturist is doing a really great job talking about your data. It'll be really good, trust me, I'll help you out. So what she started doing was studying what are the stories as we go through history, what are the stories that we are telling ourselves about the technology, how we interact and act with technology. And so she went back into history and sort of mapping those stories, right? She's a good social scientist. And so the first story that she was telling us, and the first story that we get to, is the story of Jacques de Vaucanson. So Jacques de Vaucanson was an inventor in France in the 1700s. And he created a mechanical duck. Now, this mechanical duck rocked the world. It was so amazing that Voltaire said, when you look upon de Vaucanson's duck, you will be reminded of the glory of France. This duck was a big deal. This duck did 4 things. Okay, number 1, the duck did what all ducks do, it waddled. Number 1. Number 2, what it would do is it would flap its beak. So it would waddle and it would flap its beak. The third thing that it would do, which was pretty amazing for the time, remember we're talking 1700s here, is it would eat. So it would waddle, flap its wing, and then you would feed it. You give it a pellet and it would feed it. And you would actually hear it going through its whole body. Can you guess what the 4th thing would be? So it would waddle, flap its duck, it would eat, and then it would poop. Yes, I'm sure I'm making my mother proud talking about pooping ducks in front of all of you professionals. But it did. It would do these 4 things, and it freaked people out, right? Because it looked so real. It did everything that a duck did. It literally showed the glory of France. I mean, it was that big of a deal. And it fooled people, and that dissonance kind of went into their heads, and it made them sort of excited about it, but it also kind of repelled them. And they didn't really know how they felt about this pooping duck. Making mom proud. Okay, next. We go forward about 75 years, and there's this 19-year-old teenage girl who's hanging out in Geneva with her friends, and she writes a ghost story. This ghost story, of course, is Frankenstein. And I just have to say, a 19-year-old girl wrote this story. The first science fiction story, and as a technologist, one of the most powerful stories still today. I'm just floored by it, right? So it, of course, is Mary Shelley and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And what's interesting about Frankenstein is Shelley is looking at the metaphysical implications of this technology. And we know the metaphysical implications and the physical implications of this because it was carried on for many, many years in the movies and the other copycat books that came after it, right? You have guy, and at that time it was a guy, wants to create this incredible thing. The person creates this incredible thing comes alive and kills him. That was pretty much the story. Of that, it sort of chased him down, but as the derivative of that went out was, it sort of taught us about what it meant to create something that was sort of animated and had life. It was, we create something, that something gets created and comes alive, that thing kills us. That was pretty much it. That was the story. That was the story for centuries, actually. In a lot of even the science fiction work, if you look at all the stories that was told, is that if you create something that's very smart, and you create something that can act on its own, the first thing that that thing will do is kill you. This is a problem. Next, we go forward to the 1950s. The 1950s, right, it comes out of World War II. You've got the code breakers of Bletchley Park. So in the UK, you have a group of computer scientists who are using computers, massive computers, to try to break the Nazi code. And you have a computer scientist by the name of Alan Turing. And Turing worked in Bletchley Park, and after it was over, he started thinking about the implications of what they had done. They had basically used computers for a task that humans couldn't do. These computers were so super smart that he started wondering, can a machine think? This was the question that he posed, and again, sort of rocked the world, rocked the computer science world. Can a machine think? And with that, he came up with a test called the Turing test. It's a very simple test. You sit in a room, you type up a note, and you pass it through the wall, and then the note comes back, and you sort of read the note, and you sort of have a conversation. And on the other side of that wall is either a computer or a human. You don't know which. If you think it's a human, it is a human, great, we're all humans and we can talk to each other. But if it's actually a computer, and you think it's a human, that computer has passed the Turing test. And what it means is that computer has tricked you. That computer has tricked you into thinking that it was human. Now, this is a problem. Because if you add all of this up, right, we go from mechanical pooping duck that kind of freaks you out because it looks a little kind of real. We have the world of sort of Frankenstein where we create something that is sort of awesome and powerful, and that thing, once it comes and can act on its own free will, it will come and kill you. And then we actually have our interaction. The way that we interact with technology is somehow fooling us. This, when you add all of this up, it pretty much leads us to one place. Now, wow, you guys are cool. I don't get that. But I do have to explain it just to be safe. So for all those who, wow, you guys are cool. For all of you who aren't huge geeks, and I gotta come hang out with you guys more often. So Cyberdyne comes from the Terminator story. Cyberdyne is the industry, the company that makes Skynet. Skynet is the global defense system that goes online, gets its own free will, and I think in a matter of milliseconds decides the fate of humanity, extinction. So you have all this stuff, and basically a Terminator, and it's the end of humankind. So that's why I say you go from, add all these things up and dun dun. I do want to point out, by the way, that in 3 easy steps, we went from a pooping duck to the end of the human race. How about that for a Saturday morning? This, though, I mean, I'm a huge science fiction fan, and I love nothing more than huge robots coming down and sort of attacking us, or huge robots attacking each other and doing all these things, and that's really cool. But if we're going about the work of actually building the future and thinking about the future and having this vision for the future, this is a problem. Because these stories matter. I think this is what Dr. Bell is pointing out in the work that we've been doing. The stories that we tell ourselves about how we're acting and interacting with these technologies matter. Because they lead us to some very unfortunate ends when we sort of think about this. We think about this technology, that it's somehow apart from us, that you created it, it fools builds us and then you create it and it goes off and it hates us and so it kills us, or at the moment it can have any sort of free will or any sort of intelligence that it's going to come and kill human beings. This is actually quite dangerous because it affects not only the stuff that we build, but how we think about the future that we're going to live in. So one of the things that I started thinking about is how do we change that narrative? How do we change that story? And so I started asking myself, do algorithms dream of electric sheep? This, of course, comes from the Philip K. Dick novel. There was some science fiction fan. This comes from a Philip K. Dick novel, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which was turned into Blade Runner. And what Philip K. Dick was doing was thinking about, again, that implication of having all of these technologies. Dick wrote a lot about androids, a lot about AI, a lot about intelligence, and really imagined its implications on us. And so we started thinking about, can we think about the technologies that we're creating, the technologies and the science that we're interacting with, can we think about it differently? And I came across this quote, which is a quote from a lecture that he gave up in Toronto a little while after he had written Blade Runner. And in it he was talking about the constructs, and when he said constructs, he was talking about technology. He said, the constructs do not mimic humans. They are, in many deep ways, actually human already. Which I found incredibly powerful. Because what he was saying and what he was thinking about is these technologies that we create are not separate from us. They are us. We imbue them with our humanity. Whatever we create, whether these technologies or these algorithms, we imbue them with the stories that we tell ourselves. And these stories are incredibly important, that we need to take care in what we tell and how we tell them, because it becomes our choice. It becomes our choice about what we want to do with those technologies. I think it's probably very obvious now that you've heard me talk for most of this morning, I'm an optimist. I'm a huge optimist. I think the future is going to be awesome because we are going to build it. It makes no sense to me why you would think about the future being bad, or why you would be pessimistic about the future. If we're going to build the future, why would you build a future that sucks? We should build a future that's awesome. Let's do that. And so, as I started going through and thinking about this, for me, technology, and a lot of the technology that sort of fills our lives, and again, as compute moves to zero, we're surrounded by all this intelligence, we have all this big data, and for a lot of people, it's a little overwhelming and a little scary. But for me, being an optimist, I simply think about technology as a tool. And these things are just tools, right? It's just a hammer. And humans are really good at getting fixated on their tools. They love to get fixated on the hammer. But certainly what we should be fixated on is what that hammer can do. It can build a house, right? These things that it can do. And that's why that story about what we want it to do, what the effect that we want it to have, is so incredibly important. This quote is a quote from my chief that's not it. This is a quote from my chief technology officer at Intel. And it marked a significant point for me when he said this about a year and a half ago. So our chief technology officer at Intel is Justin Brown. He's like the head geek of Intel, right? He's the geek of 100,000 geeks. He's like the uber geek. Like, my geek can beat up your geek kind of thing. He's a great guy. He actually has a history in supercomputing. He's a great engineer. But about a year and a half ago, he said this quote. He said that science and technology have progressed to the point where what we build is only constrained by the limits of our imagination. Wow. To actually have the chief technology officer of a huge company like Intel say that really kind of gives me goosebumps. Because what he's saying is that we've gotten to the point that we have so much power. We have the ability to do whatever we want, and the deficit that we have is our own imagination. The deficit that we have is the stories that we're telling ourselves, and that we actually have to come up with better stories. We have to come up with stories that push us further. and that anything that human beings have ever done, any grand achievement, anything of note, was imagined first. We have to imagine it before we can build it. And so he, and a lot of what I do, is sort of pushing that imagination, pushing that story, and those stories as far as possible, because once we do that, we can actually then go and build them. And so one of the things that we do as a part of that is something we have called the Tomorrow Project. And the Tomorrow Project is kind of the public side of my future casting work, where we kind of say we want everybody to have a conversation about the future. And we do those conversations through, sometimes I sit down and talk to people, I'll sit down and talk to scientists, I'll talk to luminaries, I'll talk to science fiction authors like Bruce Sterling and Cory Doctorow, I'll even talk to sort of celebrities like will.i.am. And we'll have these conversations about what kind of future you want and what kind of future you want to avoid. And we also do science fiction stories based on science fact as a way to kind of imagine that future. Because science fiction stories based on science fact give people a language to talk about the future. I'm not a synthetic biologist. Are you a synthetic biologist? Okay, he said no. I want you to know I was speaking at one science center where somebody goes, actually I am a synthetic biologist. I was like, dude, really? So you're not. So if I give you a science fiction story based upon fact about synthetic biology, you and I can have a conversation about, is this a good future? Does this future freak us out? But it's based on science, first and foremost. And so we use that to get out there and have more conversations. And we do podcasts and all these other things. And we give it all away for free. It's all free. That's all online. All the authors keep their rights. The whole idea is that we want to have these science-based, fact-based conversations about the future, because when I talk with folks, I sort of tell them, don't sit back and let the future happen to you. Right? Don't be passive. Don't let the future happen to you. Become an active participant in your future. We need to own the fact that we all build the future in one way or another. Right? Whether it be through our own lives, through our family, through our community, through our business, even through our world, we all build the future. And literally, for you folks here today, you will build the future of your businesses, but also, I think very specifically, in the minds of people who come to your centers. You are actually crafting visions of the future, which is incredibly important. And so what we say is that everybody needs to be an active participant, because what we're trying to do is have that conversation. Because that conversation allows that participation. The more you talk to people, the more you talk to your friends and family, the more you talk in the office or where you work, the more you talk in the media, the more you talk in government, these conversations actually matter. These conversations actually can craft a future, because we can begin to talk about what is the future we want and what is the future we want to avoid. And this is incredibly important, because if we don't do that, then we let the future happen to us, and we can't do that. So, being Intel's, and we're in the home stretch. So, being Intel's futurist, when I first took the job, kind of freaked me out, to be quite honest, because I realized that I work at a company where we will, as I told you earlier, we literally are looking to touch the lives of every human being on the planet. Right? And I'm sort of working to come up with a vision for what that could look like and how we actually do that. And it's a big deal. Right? If you're going to go out and do this, it's actually happening. Right? The future and building the future is in our hands, right? You can't punt. That's why I say the work that you do, and the reason why I wanted to come and talk to you this morning, the work that you do is incredibly important. Because you put science and technology, you put visions of that future in front of people, and you actually allow them to touch it and interact with it and live with it. And so, like it or not, look around all these tables, look at who's next to you. You will build the future. And that is a huge responsibility, right? You can't punt. You can't just say, well, somebody else is going to take care of that. No, it's actually us. So I took that really seriously, and for about a year and a half, I traveled around the world talking to people about the future and about how do we change the future? How do we build a better future? And I went and talked to scientists and science fiction authors and activists and government officials, and I pissed a lot of people off. I met a lot of people really angry. They would say things like, nobody can make a better future. Nobody can change the future. What makes you think you can change the future? Why are you even asking me this question? Who are you and how did you get in here? They would get really mad. And I was like, oh, dude, I don't want to make you mad. I'm sorry. But it had this deep, visceral response in people when you started talking about the future and tinkering around with it. But what I would tell them is I'd say, look, who else is going to do it? Like, it has to be us. We're the ones who are going to do it. Now is the time. We can't sit back and just let it happen to us. So what do? So it was really near the end of that. I was actually in London talking with the science fiction author, Cory Doctorow. He's an activist, and we were talking about this. And we sat down, and we were kicking it back and forth, and he was getting mad at me, and it was this sort of thing I was kind of used to. And then we hit upon an idea. I think a really, really simple idea that had incredible resonance for me, but I also think could have incredible resonance for the work that you're doing. So the question would be, how do we change the future? And the way that we change the future is we change the story that people tell themselves about the future that they will live in. Pretty easy, right? You could just give them a science fiction story and say, this is the future that you're going to live in. But also incredibly complicated, right? The way that you change the future is you change the story, you change the narrative that we are going to tell ourselves about the future that we are going to live in. We're the ones who get to imagine it, all of us. We're the ones who get to say, this is the future that we want, this is the future that we don't want, or these are the futures that we should explore. But it's that narrative. That's why these narratives and these stories and the way and the work that you do is so incredibly important, because you are literally crafting the future in those conversations. Because that's what's happening inside of all the centers and all of the work that you're doing. You're doing that, and then that's getting carried forward. That's getting carried out into schools, into the community. That vision, if you will, that story, actually changes the future. And so, I would ask two things of you as you do that. Number one, focus on making the lives of people better, right? What do we want to do with all this technology? What do we want to do with this amazing science? What is the story that we want to tell ourselves? I believe that we need to do the best we can to touch the lives of every person on the planet and make their lives better, right? We can do good business, we can do good for our communities, but if we can make the lives of people better, we're going to succeed. And then number two is to have a vision, right? Certainly based on science, certainly based on fact, but have a vision, right? Don't sit back. Have a vision for the future that you want, and then do something about it. So my next slide is the most important slide in the entire deck, but it requires a little bit of a story. This might surprise you. So when I was growing up, coming up in business, I wrote speeches. I wrote speeches for the executives. This was before I was at Intel. I wrote speeches for my executives. And there was one executive that I used to write speeches for, that in every single presentation that I did for him, I had to include a picture of dogs playing poker. Exactly. Now, I was very young, and so I didn't question it. I said, yes, sir. We'll do that. So I got really good at it. In every presentation for years, I would always include a picture of dogs playing poker. So if there was sort of a screen or a TV, I'd put the picture of dogs playing poker on the TV. If there was a picture frame on the wall, I'd put the picture of dogs playing poker on the TV. Right, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? It's the one that's got the bulldog. I know this picture really well. This bulldog, right? It's got this little card in his toe. So it was great. We did that for many years. And then finally, as I neared the end, I finally got out the guts, and we were both parting. And he was leaving the country, I was going to a different company, and so I finally asked him, I said, so why did I have to include a picture of dogs playing poker in every single presentation? He smiled at me and said, Brian, people love pictures of dogs playing poker. Why wouldn't you include pictures of dogs playing poker? So he was right. So I've taken on that tradition, I've taken on that mantle, and in every single presentation that I do, I don't include a picture of dogs playing poker. What I do include, though, is a picture of animals using technology. The longer you look at this, the more freaked out you're going to get. I was giving a completely different talk and a completely different thing, but I do actually include this. The people from the other science centers will tell you, oh yeah, this is in every presentation. I was giving this to some corporate CMOs, right, chief marketing officers in some big fancy place somewhere, and I brought this up, and I didn't know, but the guy who's the chief marketing officer from Petco was in the audience, and way in the back, and he goes, our new market! Yeah, it's a really freaky thing. But again, I want to thank you so much. I want to thank you for having me. I think that the work that, I mean, you obviously know that I'm a huge fan of the work of what you're doing. But I also think that you have an incredible opportunity in the work that you do, in the people that you touch, in the communities that you live in, and in a much broader way. You actually are shaping the future in the work that you do. And so really what I want to say is thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.